Good evening, Pueblo, Colorado. The time is 5:30 p.m. on June 15th, 2026, and I call this work session for Pueblo City Council to order. Before we move into the council's slated agenda, we have just a couple of things that I'd like to do for just some housekeeping and a request by Councilor Latino. Councilors, I just wanted to take a moment to ask a question. I've been asked by the mayor's staff if you all are okay with canceling our upcoming work session on June 29th. It would be the 5th one of the month. At this point, what I've learned is that there's really nothing too pressing to be slated for that particular work session. So I'm wanting to get your idea around if we'd want to take a break for that upcoming work session.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah,
There's always important stuff to talk about, but we can cancel it.
good. Okay, perfect.
Budget support.
No,
No?
some executive sessions. I want to do some executive sessions.
On the 29th?
I'm not gonna be here on the 22nd. Do we have one more?
It would be the 5th one.
This is the cancel.
Do we have a fourth one? We have a fourth one. right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another work session. I'm not thinking straight.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, councilors. We'll go ahead and request from the mayor's office that we move forward with taking a break and canceling that work session. If things look different and something from the mayor's office does become pressing and we need to meet, we'll pivot and reconvene if we're needing to. Okay, at this time, I'm going to recognize for 2 minutes, Councilor Latino. He has just an acknowledgement he would like to take a moment to complete, so go on.
Thank you. We often hear about the police department and the fire department. And I have something to say this evening. On Sunday, we had a situation in my district that I needed help. It had to do with code enforcement. Actually, it had to do with somebody telling me that he was a police officer from Denver. Well, great. He was a police officer from Denver. But his family were. Okay. So I contacted the police department and I had 2 police officers respond, Jay Gunner Jensen and Ashton Lovett. And they were absolutely wonderful. Took care of the situation and got the quote unquote Denver police officer to understand this is not Denver's Pueblo, Colorado. And he has no authority here, especially when the family is breaking city codes. So I want to thank Jay Gunner Jensen and Ashton Lovett and ask the deputy chief if he would make sure that they're informed that we appreciate their efforts. Thank you. And one other, I'm sorry. Today, right here on Main Street, or excuse me, Union, we had the horticulture division from Parks and Recreation. Lena Helen, Allison Smith, and Irene Pollock. And they were doing absolutely beautiful work here and on the street, planting the flowers and bushes for the summer. So they need to be appreciated as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Latino. All right, at this point, we will go ahead and move forward with the council's meeting agenda. I will recognize Mr. Brian McCain for 5 minutes for city updates.
Thank you, ma'am. Parks and Rec, join us for the Still City Arkansas River Festival on Saturday, June 27th at Waterworks Park. There's fun for the whole family. Build your own boat race, the Generation Wild Adventure Alley, music, food trucks, community bike and paddleboard parade, plus the rubber duck race. Take a free shuttle service to Waterworks Park from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. with ADA accessible from Dutch Clark Stadium, 11th Street and Pueblo Boulevard, or the dirt lot where the dirt lot is there, or Pillar Park. And again, join us for the Waterworks Park from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for SCARF, as it's called. And for more information, visit www.pueblo.us/scarf, SCARF, or call 719-553-2790. Shelter Open House is June 18th. We want to invite you to this week's upcoming open house with the Pueblo Shelter, Safe Side Recovery, and our community partners for the campus of the shelter, which includes both 710 West 4th Street and 728 West 4th Street. The open house is on Thursday, June 18th from 2 to 5 p.m. Come join us to hear about the recent housing placement success with residents and find out about services offered to clients and meet all of our community partners there. The 24th Street Bridge Open House is June 25th. The City of Pueblo invites community members to attend the public open house for the 24th Street Bridge over BNSF Railroad and Downtown Pueblo Corridor Study. This is Thursday, June 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Centennial High School, which is 2525 Mountain View Drive. Residents can review project information and provide comments to the project team. To find out more, go to pueblo.us/24th Bridge DTC. I'm sure if you go to our website, you could see the link right up there too. Just an update from our Muni Court cleanup and Team Up to Cleanup team. Last week, our cleanup crews picked up around 26,000 pounds of trash and debris while primarily focusing on the east side, but they did hit Bessemer and a little bit of the west side and south side. So again, good job to our crew out there picking up all that. As a reminder, the city offices will be closed for Juneteenth this Friday, but Recycle Works will be open all day Friday on its normal hours. So if you need to get out there Friday, they will be open and operating. With that, it concludes my update.
Thank you, Mr. McCain. Moving forward with the council's agenda, I would like
Can I ask you a
to,
question real quick?
oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Gomez, please.
Yeah, I was trying to get a hold of Steve. He's not here, Myers from Park and Rec. Do you know when they're gonna start the gate closing and opening and times around the Bessemer Park? Because they have all the mechanisms in place. They have all the
Mhm.
gates. There's like 11 openings that I checked. But it's looking really great out there. I'm just wondering after the dark hour, why are people in the park? And
Yeah,
they're also bedding down there pretty good now. They feel a little bit more secure, I think. But can you find out for me?
yeah, I'll find out, sir, and I'll send you an email tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Is that it? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, moving forward with the council's agenda, I would like to invite up Mr. Sal Pace, Dominic Wheelminster, who will present on the front range passenger rail. So gentlemen, want to come on up? And I will recognize you for your presentation for 15 minutes once you get all loaded up.
Thank you, Madam Work Session Chair. And I'm joined by a lot of folks here who are interested in the project and folks helping to advance the project. So just want to thank everyone who came. Roxy, Sol, the whole crew. So thank you, everybody. Jamie, everybody. Choo-choo, okay. Sal Pace, General Manager of the Front Range Passenger Rail District, and Dominic W. Wymanson. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having us, Council. Colorado Connector is Colorado's future Front Range passenger rail train connecting state line to state line. It is COCO for short, and over 25,000 Coloradans helped name the train in a campaign this last spring. And we are going to be delivering service to Pueblo. And the Front Range Passenger Rail District, the organization that is delivering the service, is a Title 32 special district. And you all are familiar with lots of Title 32 special districts. So here in Pueblo, we have the Lower Arkansas River Conservation District or the Southeastern Water Conservancy District as examples of Title 32 special districts. Title 32 special districts are created under statute and state law as quasi-state government entities with the purpose of delivering a specific entity or purpose to the state of Colorado. In this case, we have the statutory direction to plan, finance, construct, and operate intercity passenger rail. And intercity passenger rail is different than commuter rail. It's managed by the FRA and is intended to go at higher speeds and to connect major metropolitan areas, as opposed to commuter rail, which is intended, that's what you see in Denver on the light rail in Denver, intended to move people within a metropolitan area. I'm teasing this slide here. So intercity passenger rail goes a little faster in between major metropolitan areas. In Colorado, we are working on a phased approach to delivery for delivering the Colorado Connector. Phase 1 is being financed largely because of RTD, and we are splitting the cost with RTD to deliver rail service up to the Northwest Corridor north of Denver. And what that does is allows us to jumpstart for future funding into phase 2, which will extend service from Fort Collins to Pueblo. And in phase 2, we will have service in Pueblo within 5 years of receiving money from a new tax measure. Ballot funds will go directly to service operations and expansion. So a potential new tax, all dollars would be going to the south because the phase 1 dollars are already in place. Joint service, this is our phase 1, and it's going to start with 3 round trips per day. This is up to Fort Collins, 69 miles of track and a travel time of 1 hour and 45 minutes. And it does not go along I-25. It goes along the I-36, Highway 36 corridor, and 285 to the north. It goes into Boulder and along those communities. We are getting this done because RTD is putting in $150 million to help get this going. So we already have the term sheet signed on this deal, and we're working on a PE agreement right now with BNSF. BNSF is going to be the provider, and it's a unique service delivery that hasn't been done anywhere else in the country. And I'll get into that a little more in a second. With full service overview, we will have 12 stations on the corridor, with the southernmost station in initial rounds. Well, actually, southernmost station on Colorado Connector being in Pueblo, but we're also developing a station for the city of Trinidad on their Southwest Chief route. That's the Chicago to Los Angeles route. And from Pueblo to Colorado Springs up to Sterling Ranch in Douglas County, onto Littleton, and then into Denver Union Station. We'll be stopping at a couple other special event stops. So how is this a uniquely Colorado approach to delivery? Is we already have a signed term sheet with BNSF for the Fort Collins to Denver segment. And in this scenario, we are using what is called non-209 service. In previous state attempts across the country to deliver railroad service or state contracts, what have traditionally happened is states have contracted with Amtrak, and then they receive special privileges over freight railroads. The freight railroads consider this a very contentious process that they don't like. Often what they try to do is they put the maximum amount of potential freight impact at the highest level possible so that they can never lose a case before the Surface Transportation Board. In this case, we were able to cut our delivery costs by 60% in capital costs because we contracted directly with BNSF. They will be our contractor. But then they will receive for their annual service fees 50% greater pay for on-time delivery. So they're a true business partner with the FRPR, with the district, where they'll make more money for helping to provide the service. In the past, what states have done have used 209 powers. They have forced their way onto the tracks, and it's been a contentious process. And because we didn't do that, we're getting on the tracks for half the price. We already have the term sheet signed, and there's not a whole lot of guessing games about what capital costs are going to be. I think the reasons for COCO are intuitive. In Colorado Springs, for instance, people are losing 61 hours, a week and a half now of work time in traffic. If you drive up to Denver, you know what it's like. It's impacting air quality, and these gas costs are from being stuck in traffic, trying to travel along I-25, and these are pre-Iraq Iran war gas prices. The comfort of journey is going to be a more comfortable ride, riding on the train as opposed to in a car. And then it's going to be more affordable. So we're modeling out a ride from Pueblo to Denver at less than $19 as the starting cost. We're also working with the Broncos. We'll be announcing special event stops at the new Broncos Stadium, which is along the Consolidated Main Line, as well as the new women's soccer stadium, the Colorado Summit, on South Broadway and I-25 as special event stops. And then of importance for the city of Pueblo is we are proposing that the cities themselves own, operate, manage their station areas, and that we will send millions of dollars back to local communities. So the base amount that we want to propose sending to the city of Pueblo is $75 million. And we're adding an extra 10% on top of that for approving a station area narrative over the next 60 days. The funds for the stations can be used for sidewalks, bike access, transit, community improvements, TODs, stationary improvements. The concept is we want the communities to support and drive the local vision while strengthening downtown communities and allowing the communities to maintain local control as opposed to an almost statewide sized special district to drive the planning process. I really like this contrast of Denver Union Station 26 years ago and Denver Union Station today on the right, because you can really visualize what a station can be. And a station can be more than just a place where people get on and off the train, but also can be a transportation hub and an anchor for other economic and community vitality and activation in a downtown. And we're hoping that Pueblo will lead that vision for the community station. Moving forward, we're undergoing stakeholder engagement. We've held, Roxy, how many town halls have we held in Pueblo? We've held 3 town hall meetings in Pueblo with over 500 people coming to the town halls in Pueblo. We are wrapping up a public-facing delivery plan. We have 5 years of planning already under our belt, and it's been workshopped with the Class 1 railroads at the table. That's the Union Pacific and Burlington Northern. And we're turning it into a public-facing document. I got the document from the engineers and I said, you know, we can't put this out there. No one knows what this says. So we're turning it into something that makes sense and has easy to understand graphics. That'll be rolled out in July. And then we are contemplating a ballot referral in August. That would be district-wide. Pueblo is in the district. Right now, we are modeling a third of a penny for a district-wide tax that would generate about $290 million annually. And that would allow us to deliver service with all of the dollars for the first 5 years to get service down to Pueblo. Now, we have a goal here of having service to all of the stations within 5 years. And that means Pueblo is the last one on the line. So we've got to start in Pueblo to get it done. And I live in Pueblo, so we're not going to let it not happen. So when we get to Pueblo, we also get to the largest county in the state and the second largest city, which is Colorado Springs. So Here's a vision of the station alignment. I think we all know this. Pueblo County, and this started when I was a county commissioner on using 1A dollars. It was one of the 15 projects that we designated as a 1A project. Started working on station area planning. Pueblo City put in money, Pura put in money. There's been a lot of research and planning already done to design the station area at Union Depot. And the plan is to use the adjacent building next to the Union Depot, the historic baggage building, I believe it is, as the station hall. So here's an opportunity for people to get involved. And if we have questions, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them or pass them to any of the other folks on our team who are here.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Pace. All right, I will open up the discussion now for counselors to field questions. I will begin. Laura Gomez, please.
Well, I got a boatload of questions, well, trainload of questions, let's just say. I'm just curious in reference to, if you could elaborate, you said commuter service versus passenger service. And if I got this right, the passenger fare is $19. Is that what you said? And
From here to Denver.
from here to Denver, okay. And then there's an awful lot to digest. You're talking about numbers of $75,750,000 back to the city of Pueblo? Is that right?
With the 10% boost, it would be 82.5 million over 25 years.
Over 25 years. That's a great revenue generator right there. So being that Pueblo's last on the line, what are the actual dates or proposed dates that you actually see us coming online and taking advantage of this? What year?
We're aiming for 5 years of us receiving funding. We'll start receiving funding, and if we pass a ballot measure this November, so we'd start receiving funding in 2027 Q3. So our goal is Q3 of 2032.
What about anything that we could take advantage of where this far south, and following your lead on being a choo-choo, is there anything with freight kind of implications that can be on since we're far south and we're going that far, can that be intertwined or no?
You're going south to Trinidad, for instance?
Yeah.
So it's actually part of our statutory mission to go to Trinidad. Quite honestly, the ROI on the improvements on the tracks of Trinidad did not model out great. We're planning to do this all using local and state dollars at this point. If there were an opportunity in the future for federal dollars, I think what we could do with that is to go south of Pueblo to Trinidad, and then north of Fort Collins to Cheyenne. I will mention Colorado, or the state of New Mexico just finished their statewide rail plan, and they suggested that they want to connect with Colorado Connector and have a train that goes from Cheyenne all the way down to Albuquerque.
Okay, sounds pretty exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Dante.
Yeah, I have well, you know my one question, but I won't ask it. I noticed that there's Fountain. Is there a reason why Fountain is not included as a stop? Is there?
Which town? I'm sorry, Fountain?
Yes.
Fountain is not going to be a stop. If we get permission from the Class 1 railroads, there's a potential for another stop in northern Colorado Springs. And we have had good conversations with Air Force Academy, and we're looking at other locations in North Colorado Springs. There's about 500,000 people who live in North Colorado Springs. Folks in Fountain, it's not going to be hard for them to get. The Colorado Springs station that's been modeled out is right downtown Colorado Springs. As you're driving on the interstate and you look over to your right, you see America the Beautiful Park and the U.S. Olympic Committee. Right south of U.S. Olympic Committee is the station location for Colorado Springs. We do have transportation concerns that folks who live north of there won't backtrack to go down. So we're hoping to add a second stop with the permission of the Class 1 railroads in North Colorado Springs. We have modeled out the downtown station with them.
Okay,
Fountain does not model out. Those riders will go to Colorado Springs downtown and
so
park
you're
there.
talking about North Colorado Springs. What about South Colorado Springs?
Well, the current station that we have modeled out is sort of in downtown Colorado Springs. We think most Colorado Springs residents are going to Denver. They're not coming to Pueblo. So from Fountain, they'll drive up to downtown Colorado Springs.
So that was I understand that most people don't come south.
Yeah.
But those of us that live south do go north.
Yeah.
And so if we're traveling on the train to get up to South Colorado Springs and have to drive down to Fountain,
Yeah.
because it's a long way from here to Fountain. That's what I was,
Well, we've worked really closely with Colorado Springs Transit, and they are going to have a permanent bus route at the new train station as well.
okay. And then you were talking about going down to Trinidad. Does that include like Walsenburg and Colorado City or not?
That gives me an opportunity to talk about the Huerfano County Commissioners. We passed a bill this session that defined our boundaries where the stations are going to be mapped, or where stations will be where there will be permanent stations. And we don't have the funding yet to get to Trinidad. It's in our long range plan. But the day our bill was passing, we are building Trinidad a station for the Southwest Chief route that goes Chicago to Los Angeles. But the day our bill passed, I got called by the Huerfano County Commissioners, and they said, "Hey, why aren't we in the district?" And, it's 3 Republicans in Huerfano County saying they wanted to be in the taxing district. I said, well, it's going to be 25 years unless we get federal dollars. They said, well, we still sort of want to be in it so that we can stay on the map. I love telling that story to, some other communities along the line. But I think, and I can't guarantee this here, but if we receive federal dollars down the road, we did win a CRISI grant a couple years ago for $90 million. That was revoked last year. So we have been successful at some CRISI is Consolidated Rate Infrastructure grant out of the Federal Railroad Administration. So we have been successful with several grants in the past. I think we would really focus on getting south from Pueblo, and Walsenburg would be a natural stop.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hernandez?
Good evening. Just a couple of questions. Number one, any chance of changing the priority from Denver to Pueblo to Denver? And because we CDOT's already shut us out, I think, Brett, of the 10-year plan altogether. There's nothing for Pueblo in the CDOT 10-year plan.
So, yeah, Counselor, what I can tell you is the reason that's coming together to the north first, and and I got involved in rail like 15 years ago because the Southwest Chief was pulling out of southeastern Colorado, and I thought maybe I can help out with this project. And then from there, we started advocating for Front Range Rail. In my mind, it was to connect Pueblo to Denver, and it still is. But the reason that we're starting in the north is because we have RTD offering to cover half the cost.
Right.
And it's because they delivered their light rail to most of Denver. But they made a political error in not delivering it, and also they broke a commitment in not delivering it to Boulder. And so they've been dealing with the political backlash of that for 15 years. And so by splitting the cost, we're getting it for half the price, because they're coming to the table with that. What I can say is those dollars are already secured, and they're largely being paid for by RTD and by state enterprises that are not collecting from Pueblo. So it includes some dollars from rental car fees. And it turns out that like 85% of them are collected at DIA. So those dollars are mostly coming from the north anyhow. So I think, you can't look a gift horse in the mouth there. What I can tell you though is because we can take that and model that into our phase one of our delivery plan and of our financial model, it allows us when we start collecting tax revenue, and that's tax revenue from Fort Collins all the way to Pueblo. For the first 5 years, it's to deliver service to Pueblo.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Counselor Boston?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
Yeah, I share similar concerns. The more I hear about this, the less I like it. It's from day one, we were promised something great and now it's like we're what we always are. Pueblo's the redheaded stepchild. We're being forgotten about. It feels like you're gonna have a hard time getting this community to buy into something that we're gonna be the last people to reap the reward from. So, the more and more this gets talked about, I just see less community buy-in. So how do you combat that?
I feel like maybe I'm not giving the right message here, if that's what you're hearing. This is a win for Pueblo, including $82.5 million to invest into downtown. That can help facilitate all sorts of wonderful downtown projects, whether it's an amphitheater or future gaming dreams or anything else you want to bring to downtown Pueblo. It's investing into downtown Pueblo. And delivering service to Pueblo. We already have a signed term sheet. The dollars to the north are not coming from Pueblo. Those are coming from the north. But we're gonna deliver and we're gonna bring this it's gonna get done.
Okay.
Counselors, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will move forward with the council's agenda. Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank you,
coming and
everybody.
sharing your time. All right, up next on the council's agenda, I would like to invite up Mr. Andrew Hayes, Ms. Molly Evans, and Mr. Connor Daly for a presentation on the energy performance contract. Once you're set up, the chair will recognize you for 15-minute presentation. So.
I'll get this out.
Oh, excuse me, let me clarify, 30-minute presentation. Is
Thank you.
Marla, is that what you need?
Yes,
Okay,
this will be a long and exciting discussion and topic here, but Madam Chair, members of council, thank you for hearing this evening. We're here to talk to you a little bit about an energy performance contract structure that we've been working on since 2022 originally. Back then, council had set aside some funds to conduct an energy audit of most of the buildings. We ended up doing, I believe, 120,000 square feet of building space. And ultimately, we competitively awarded a contract to CMTA through a competitive solicitation for these auditing services. These audits resulted in the identification of a number of energy-related projects that will save energy in our facilities. And basically what the contract does is it allows us, would allow us to do, is to replace aging, inefficient equipment in some of these buildings and use the energy savings that are generated by those replacements to finance and fund the replacements without having to come up with a significant capital upfront. So this has been a 2.5, 3-year process so far, but I do want to introduce CMTA. This is Connor and this is John, both from CMTA. And so they're going to give a short presentation on the contract structure. And I'll be back up following that to answer some more questions, make a few finer points to close the discussion, and we'll hear questions that you might have. So with that, I'll turn over to you and John. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, council, for having us. Like Andrew said, my name's Connor Daly. I'm a professional engineer and the project manager, kind of overseeing and working with the Public Works Department since 2024, is when we were brought in through that competitive process to audit these facilities, look at the energy expenditures and usage in all of the 28 facilities we ultimately ended up looking at and developing projects to potentially help the city moving forward.
Thanks, Connor. I'm John Gooden. I'm a principal and also a mechanical engineer, a little different than the engineers you guys were just talking to about trains. We're really focused on buildings and energy. We've been spending a lot of time just walking buildings, getting familiar with how do we use energy in our facilities in this in Pueblo. Where are the opportunities to replace outdated aged equipment that might be driving higher energy costs or might be driving other operational concerns. So I want to start out talking a little bit about what is this contract structure? How do we deliver this project? And then shift over a little bit more to talk about the actual specifics about what we found within Pueblo, about what we're proposing for Pueblo going forward. So GESC basically stands for Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract. What this is it's a construction model whereby we go through and, like Andrew said, walk buildings, investigate buildings, understand how we use energy in our buildings, where we're spending dollars on our buildings, and find ways to reduce that operational spend. And whenever we're reducing the amount of operational costs, we're taking those savings and we're using those to help fund those capital improvements. What we found, we work, all throughout the state of Colorado. We work all across the country, and that many municipalities, many school districts, many state agencies all struggle with those big capital expenditures. Typically, there are more capital needs for upgrading roofs, upgrading lighting, upgrading mechanical systems than there's actually funding available. I don't know if anybody else has looked at their electrical bill or their gas bill lately, but utility costs continue to rise. And so we kind of see, as we get ahead of that, and the more dollars we save as utility costs escalate, the more dollars we're going to save. In our world, many times when we're, running municipal facilities, we, are going to own those for a long time. That doesn't mean that the systems within those facilities have that same lifespan. They need upkeep. They need to have their maintenance addressed. So I think the reason Guaranteed Energy Savings Contracting, exists is because they allow public entities to actually, take the dollars that they're already spending on their utilities and redirect those into their actual infrastructure. We at CMTA are basically would be the prime contract holder with the city. We would be basically doing turnkey projects. There's no way for us to hide. We're doing the auditing up front. We're helping scope out the projects with Public Works. We're designing the projects, and we're actually responsible for the construction, and we're responsible for the actual performance of those buildings afterwards. And so whenever we say guaranteed energy savings, what we're really talking about is coming to Pueblo and saying, we're going to save X amount of dollars per year, and we have to stand behind that. And so across, I would say 95 projects that we've done across the country, we've never missed a guarantee. We're very proud of that, of being able to say that whenever we, put pen to paper, we are going to exceed those savings. And so we're not just, creating savings to put back into construction. We're creating savings that's actually impacting the operational budget for years going forward and cash flowing, so to speak. We've got up there select contractors and vendors based on quality. We were competitively bid through a procurement process through the city. We basically, the reason we're sitting here in front of you today is to move on to our phase 2 where we start designing these projects. We've chosen a project. We've presented 3 options to Public Works, talked about what needs to be in that project, talks about the advantages and disadvantages of both, where are the needs, where are the priorities throughout the city, and are trying to move to phase 2 where we actually start designing things, actually start putting together bid documents. Our goal at the end of phase 2 is to come back and actually bid out to subcontractors, mechanical contractors, lighting contractors to actually do the work, and competitively bid that scope as well. The other piece that, I think I mentioned that we've never missed a guarantee before. The other piece that we're very proud of is that we've never come back and asked for a change order. So once we say that we're going to do a project for a certain price,
that is on us to deliver that, no matter what the found conditions may be. Working in, existing historic buildings can sometimes be a challenge. It is on us to make that right at the end of the day and do what we said we were going to do. The last bullet item up there is the long-term measurement and verification ensuring sustainability. What we're really doing there is the Colorado Energy Office, the state energy office has, pre-qualified CMTA and multiple other firms to do this work. And the Colorado Energy Office is basically a little bit of a backstop for us. So whenever I say that we are guaranteeing energy savings, that's looking at, hey, what are your utility bills right now? And then what are your utility bills after our project? We add those up, we subtract the two. That's the difference. That's the guarantee. The Colorado Energy Office helps us out with that by basically being a third party. So you're not just trusting us to do that math. It's second grader math. Anybody could kind of do it. But the Colorado Energy Office basically signs off on that and says, hey, this actually matches up. They're living up to what they said that they were going to do. So very, very simply, of the 28 buildings that we walked and audited for the city of Pueblo, right now, between electrical and gas utility costs, we're spending about $1.3 million a year. That's an average. That's not any one year. That's an average of 3 years, because we want to kind of make sure that, hey, we're not just taking the hotter year on record or the colder year on record. We want to know that we've got some faith in that data. Right now it's $1.3 million going out the door to the utility companies every year for those 28 facilities. So we've also got aging infrastructure, aging boilers, aging rooftop units, aging pumps that, once they start reaching their end of life, become less reliable. And it starts to become like, your car that you keep taking to the shop. At a certain point, you're putting more money into that car than it may necessarily be worth. And so we kind of start thinking about, hey, once we get to that point where we're spending more on on maintenance dollars, more on utility dollars to keep the piece of equipment running, maybe it's time we ought to start thinking about upgrading that and replacing that with a newer modern piece of equipment. So what a guaranteed energy savings contract basically tries to do is shift dollars from that utility spend and start putting those dollars back into the building. And so the project that Connor's going to talk about here in a little bit is basically proposing that we reduce the amount of dollars that we're paying to utility companies from $1.3 million to about $1,020,000, and then take that $280,000 savings and use that to fund new boilers, use that to fund solar panels on buildings, use that to fund new lighting, new building automation systems. And so this is basically the same thing, but just spelled out in some bullet points. But if you like pie charts instead of arrows and graphics, this is a different way to look at it. Right now, that operations budget, that gray part of that utility cost is basically $1.3 million. That green portion is that $280,000 that I talked about. And then there will be some positive cash flow back to the city of Pueblo. Historically, our projects save about 33% above and beyond that guaranteed energy savings. And so that is 33% excess savings that just stays in the city of Pueblo's pocket. We don't see it. We're not paying utility bills. The rest of the structure of the way public works right now it all stays the same. Financial. The majority of the project that Connor's going to talk about here in a little bit is being funded from those energy savings that I talked about. Our goal throughout this process is to go out and find free dollars, find extra dollars where we can. Sometimes that comes from federal energy tax credits. Sometimes that's from utility rebates, like from Black Hills. There's been some really good state level grants lately that we've been very successful in getting. We got $5 million for Palmer High School in the Springs for some geothermal work that they're doing there. But it's really to go out and say, how are we taking advantage of all of the free dollars that we can find and deliver the most bang for the buck for the city?
All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about the project method, the procurement type method, now I'm going to dig a little bit more into the process and the actual project that me and my team have been working with Andrew in Public Works over the last almost 2 years now, really focusing on the highest needs of those 28 buildings, projects that really need to happen, whether or not it's through this energy savings method or not. Equipment is failing, it needs to be replaced, like John mentioned. So this is just one way to get that all under one package. So starting before talking about the actual items in the project, kind of how did we get here? Where did we start? Really started sitting down with Public Works and setting out of what are the priority areas for this project and for the city to make sure we're always in alignment with that, to make sure that what we are recommending, potentially designing, potentially installing are the number one priorities of the city. And these bubbles and text kind of align size-wise with that. And you can see front and center operational savings, lowering that cost impact for the city has always been front and center. Lowering the utility spend, lowering that operations, that maintenance spend year over year for this equipment has always been number one. Adjacent to those is first cost. We don't want to put the Cadillac of systems if it's not necessary. We want to get exactly what each building needs. That's a different solution every time. Every building has its own specific footprint, use cases, people in it. So that first cost is very important as well to make sure we're maximizing the amount of dollars and the amount of project we get for the same cost. ROI, that return on investment, how well the project is paying for itself and paying back, being that third and highest priority. Obviously, there's a lot of other factors that go into what we're recommending. You can see integrating with ongoing projects that the city has going on in these buildings, making sure we're not duplicating work or we're not replacing something that just got put in. Sustainability, finding that funding that John mentioned, meeting the city's standards and state standards for these types of projects for the equipment that's being installed. All of that factors in. But again, really focusing on that cost savings and reduction for the city front and foremost. So John said that when we started this process, the first thing is really data collection, looking at utility bills, walking these buildings, auditing every square foot, every light bulb, every piece of mechanical equipment, the buildings themselves, the roofs, the windows, everything, and really understanding where are the inefficiencies and the losses today, and where is the biggest opportunity in each of these buildings for us to address. So this chart is just one that we really like to show. It's a very visual overview of those facilities that we walked. It's what we call our red, yellow, green chart. Pretty self-explanatory, where anything that's in green is a system that is in very good working order, something that we likely would not need to touch. It's going to be good for the next 15 to 20 years. No capital really needs to be spent on those. Yellow is, it's probably within 5 years of really needing to be addressed. It's getting towards the end of life. It has heavy maintenance requirements, or maybe a piece of equipment that's not supported anymore. You can't even buy replacements for this. It has to be a complete gut and redo. Anything in red is something that is past that point and needs to be addressed today. And obviously, due to deferred maintenance needs, you keep it working as long as you can. So all of those pieces of equipment are running today, but definitely have that higher cost expenditure for utilities, for maintenance, to keep them running so that you can occupy these buildings. And you can see too, there are some zones that are green and red. Individual pieces of equipment break down, they need to be replaced. So there's a variety of equipment across the board in these buildings. But what you can really see, there is a good amount of red here, specifically in your lighting column, a lot of older lights. The state now requires LED lighting. So this project would include replacing lights across the board throughout these 28 buildings, matching the lights that we're putting in with new LEDs that meet those state standards. So that whole column would go to bright green. And a lot of the other red is really where we tried to focus the highest need, highest cost items here. So then going into the proposed project. So what's actually coming out of this? What are the highest priorities that we determined with the Public Works Department for these facilities? So like I mentioned, LED lighting upgrades at all 28 facilities. So there will not be a light left inside any of those 28 facilities. These are the largest facilities, the highest cost facilities, highest maintenance facilities in the city today. All those lights will be new LED, a standardized specification and type of light across all that makes maintenance easier for the city as well moving forward. the city is putting in a lot more car chargers. And there are a few situations that we had discovered through the billing from Black Hills that they are connected to main building meters rather than on separate meters. This is causing, just for the exact same amount of electricity, the cost to double or triple what it would be if you broke it out. So just a cost savings thing, that it's not saving any energy at all. This is strictly a cost saver for the city, just a better engineering solution to save those dollars up front and moving forward. A big portion of this project is solar PV arrays at least 5 facilities is what we're looking at today. Potential for those to kind of congregate on roofs, depending on the conversations we end up having with Black Hills, but at least 5 facilities that we're looking at solar arrays. All 5 of those that we are looking at and proposing would essentially eliminate the electric costs at those facilities. So that's where those dollar savings are coming from for solar specifically, is you're not going to be paying an electric bill almost any month moving forward once those are installed. Building envelope improvements, this is really the seal from the inside of your building to the outside. So just shoring that up at a couple of facilities, City Hall here, the airport terminal, Fire Station 1, the 3 main ones that we determined have some very large air gaps. This is just causing makes you run the equipment a little bit longer, a little bit harder, because you're sucking in air from the outside or pushing air out that you have already treated. So it's just causing that equipment to run a lot harder. That obviously is causing more utility dollars for those pieces of equipment. It's also putting more maintenance strain on that equipment. As it runs harder, it runs longer to get the same comfort effects for our occupants inside the facilities. Here in City Hall, you have an aging HVAC control system. That's the programming, so to speak, in the background that makes all the decisions that keep us all comfortable, runs the equipment, and hopefully does it in an efficient way. The system here is old. It is not, it's not upkept anymore by the company that sold the equipment originally. There are new systems that have come out. So it is going to exist as it does today until it breaks, essentially. It is an older system. It is relatively inefficient. It cannot do some more modern operations that we would put in a newer system today in a new building. So that really limits the amount of control you have over the units that are in this building and how efficiently you can run them to save some utility dollars there as well. The big focus of this project ended up being around the Public Works building itself. Has a very large aging and failing HVAC system, and also a pretty high need for some architectural renovations. There's some cracks in the foundation, some roof repairs that need to be done, all new windows, new ceilings throughout, new carpeting throughout. So pretty much a full gut and redo of this building became the centerpiece of this project, to kind of take that from its failing state today to almost a new building at the end of this. And then the last piece, like I said, there are multiple on that red, yellow, green chart, red pieces of equipment, older individual piece of equipment that are aging, failing, very high maintenance upkeep. That would just be replaced one for one to a very similar, more modern, more efficient piece of equipment for that building, to lower those same operation and maintenance costs there. So the high level of what this project looks like all in for all of those items of scope across 28 buildings would be about $4.9 million. The capital funds that would be requested from the city would only be $430,000 for that entire scope of work. As John mentioned, the rest is financed from that energy savings itself. So that $280,000 a year is what we are have calculated to date for those energy measures. That is balanced so that the financed amount would cost $280,000 a year with escalation. So the energy savings will pay for the actual cost each year for that financed capital. So the only capital funds required from the city to do that entire scope of work would be that $430,000. And the rest would be covered, like I said, by that $280,000 of energy savings and operation savings each year. Some other just points to note here, as John said, we want to go out and find as many free dollars, so to speak, as we can to boost this project, really help lower that capital need from the city. So from the LED lighting upgrades, Black Hills Electric has utility rebates for doing these upgrades. We've calculated that that would be in the range of about $116,000 once the LED lighting renovations were completed. That's something that CMTA would help fill out the forms and apply for those rebates on behalf of the city, lowering the need for the city to go for those dollars. And then that would just be dollars straight into the project funding this work as well. For the solar installations, there is through the Inflation Reduction Act, investment tax credits. You can get upwards of 30 to 35% back once the solar is completed, if completed by the end of 2027. So the total cost that would be potentially coming back in a direct pay tax credit from the federal government for installing that solar would be almost $600,000. Again, that CMTA would help procure and apply for with the city to get those tax credits back. And again, dollars straight into the capital funds of the city to pay for this project or for additional projects. So operations energy savings, like I said, fully covering the cost of that financed amount. And again, just really wanting to highlight almost getting a brand new building out of your existing public work building with projects that need to happen today anyway. So that is all of the slides I had. I think, Andrew, did you want anything else to say? All right, well, we're open to questions then.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. I will open up time. Oh. Go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry, one more small part here. I just want to clarify, I guess, what we're asking tonight is this is a, I would call this a step, the beginning of step 2 of a 3-step process. So we have done the audit. We've gone through competitive solicitation, selected CMTA to come and do the audit. The next phase in this process is to begin a design effort. And so the next step would be that we would enter into some kind of agreement with CMTA to cover them while they're doing design work under this project. The intent is that the design work that they would do would also be part of that financed cost you would see. So ultimately, the design and the construction work would be wrapped up together in that future finance cost. So the concern comes in, I guess, if they're going to undertake this, they start design work and they don't have an agreement with the city, we need a way to make sure that they are, that we have a way to cover our obligation to pay them for the design work that they've done, if the city chooses not to enter into the construction projects later. So if we go through this design phase and we don't do the construction work, ultimately we would need to pay CMTA for the design work that they do. We would own those designs. We could bid those out just like any other construction project if we wanted to do them. So we would own those drawings and the work that they would perform. The idea again, though, is that we take those drawings and we enter into a guaranteed energy savings contract, this energy performance contract structure, wrap up all of these costs associated with the design and the construction, and then proceed with that work. Kind of almost, they're going to undertake the design, and then we are going to determine how best to ensure compliance with our procurement regulations with respect to bidding and competitive bidding for that construction work, and then also make sure that our, I guess, our obligations to them are settled or satisfied through some kind of coverage of an agreement for the design work that they'd be doing in the meantime. Presumably, if we enter into an energy performance contract or a guaranteed energy savings contract, this amount that we would set aside for the design work would be de-obligated, and that performance or that professional services agreement for the design work would be terminated if we entered into an energy performance contract with them. And those costs would be borne under the financing that we'd be seeking there. I will pause there and let you guys ask some questions about that. But the last piece I want to say is that obviously last Friday, we all got an announcement via the news that Black Hills has filed yet another rate increase case. And so that right there is in their plan every year for the next 10 years. In the first filing that they did last year, they indicated that there was going to be an increase every year for the next 10 years. And so I anticipate this will continue, and their doing so only strengthens the case for why this is important. The energy savings that will be generated by this work will be even more meaningful than what we've estimated in the audits that have been done over the last 2 years. So with that, I'll pause and please ask lots of questions, but we'll take anything you've got.
Thank you. Now we'll go ahead and field questions from the council now. I'll begin with Councilor Gomez, and then we'll move over to President Eliff.
One of the things that caught my eye in the initial part of your presentation, you sound like you were guaranteed there'd be no change orders. Well, if there are change orders, and we all know how expensive that is, who's gonna bear the cost of that?
CMTA.
You guys will bear the cost? Okay. Second thing is, I'm always concerned about, when you guys talk about equipment, you know, this is your counselor. We don't have a lot of guys that are, you know, working out in the field. How do you deal with things like planned obsolescence of equipment? I mean, you have all these parts and things, and what do you do? Is there safeguards in it? Is there guarantees? How do you handle that?
Let me take that. So I would say CMTA started as an engineering company.
Say it again?
Sorry. CMTA started as as an engineering company, just design engineering 55 years ago. For the majority of our time in operation, we were just a third-party neutral engineering company designing projects, focusing on super high-performing buildings. You know, around 2010, we started to focus on this energy performance contracting method because we saw that there was a need for neutral third parties to be able to judge this equipment with a critical eye. We bid out equipment directly. We know what works. We're not going to sole source on anything, but we also, a lot of times when we start talking about high performance buildings, people start hearing about the newest, latest, and greatest bleeding edge. That's really not what we're about. We're about saying, what is the modern equipment that is proven, resilient, and like can be maintained? Because so many times we go into, we see a lot of buildings. We go into so many existing buildings and see, oh, this unit's torn apart because this one sensor fails every time on this piece of equipment. It's a constant maintenance headache. That's us just putting, you know, a little note in our back pocket to say, I'm going to watch for this from now on. And I'm going to be a little bit more critical about maybe providing or recommending this actual boiler. That's built into it. And I think whenever we are going, after we get through design, like Andrew said, and are going through and actually, you know, choosing contractors, choosing equipment to do this work, we want to make sure that we're getting the best piece of equipment that we can, and that we're doing it at the most competitive price as we do it.
Well, the fear factor here for me is anytime I hear the word HVAC,
Yeah.
you know, I start to shudder because we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars.
100%.
And we get asked this all the time. You know, the city is not exactly in the greatest position right now to be. And if we're going to be realistic, what you guys are talking about are very, very ambitious. So I hope you're going to take a look at the stuff that I'm talking about and give us some guarantee. If you can give us more guarantees, that'd be great. But what you got going on now is very, very ambitious.
To add to that as well, we'll never recommend a system, a piece of equipment that one is not maintainable or installable in the area. The contractors that are here, whether it's your maintenance staff that can't maintain those, it's not a system that we want to put in then. Same thing for if there's not installers in the area that know how to maintain, know how to install that properly. That's also not a system we're going to recommend just because we believe it's the best, most efficient system out there. Additionally, on top of that, obviously everything comes with warranty. All of the pieces of equipment that are selected come with a 1 to 5 year warranty, depending on what it is. Solar is even further than that, lights as well. Labor warranties from all of our contractors. You end up with a warranty from CMTA as well to help maintain these. If needed as well, CMTA can perform maintenance and help kind of maintain and own some of this equipment as well, if that is the city's desire. Obviously, that's a slightly different cost, but it is an option to get a different piece of equipment that might not be maintainable by the staff here. But typically we want to put a piece of equipment, a system in place that the city staff is capable of maintaining, or at worst case scenario, your local contractors that are your trusted partners already can come in any day of the week, work on, maintain at a reasonable price, and know how to get that done.
If I can, one more piece here, you hit on a great point about planned obsolescence of equipment. That was the original question. We're here, I guess, making sure that we don't leave obsolete, inefficient, or equipment that continually breaks on us in place. That's a huge cost. And so when we're determining what our cost savings are going to be, we're not only looking at the energy savings itself, but the savings generated by being able to free up our maintenance technicians, our 2 HVAC technicians that we have for all 300 of our buildings, to be able to work on the other things that they need to do. Same thing for our 1 electrician, right? Those kinds of things are real impacts that will come from having recapitalized equipment without having to come up with $4.5, $5 million of capital funds up front to pay for those things right now. So this is a structure that uses those energy savings to be able to make this happen.
You know, I understand it's the cost of doing business. I got it. I'm not trying to be a jackass here, but you know, when you talk about 430,000 capital costs, $280,000 in savings, you're still looking at another 200 grand.
That's every
got it.
year, $280,000 in savings.
280,000?
230, I'm sorry.
280.
280. So it's 280 every single year in energy savings alone.
Okay.
I'll add with escalations built into that as well. So we do a full analysis of, like Andrew was mentioning, Black Hills historically, how we're not going to assume that that's not going up. We can. It makes it a little bit of a safer option for the city if that's the route that you want to go down. But in reality, we look at least a 10-year history of filed tariffs with the Public Utility Commission to say historically how much has Black Hills been escalating your rates. That is built in already to the financial model, understanding what the savings need to be, because 1 unit of energy today might save $1, but if that's escalating over 20 years, it might be $6 in year 20. So that all gets factored in as well, so that we really understand how to balance how much we think is going to be saved with these measures and what you're actually spending.
President Aliff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the information. On the 4.9 million, how long is that financed for?
So that is for 20 years. So that, like I said, those are escalated as well, but we have to perfectly balance. It has to be at least 1 penny essentially of positive cash flow per year. That is legislated by the Colorado Energy Office. If we do not generate a positive cash flow, then the project does not meet the standards the state requires. We can't go forward with that.
So in the 4.9 million, that's design fees and everything?
That's soft and hard cost all in.
And so what did we pay for the audit?
I believe it was $125,000. It was 25 cents per square foot for the buildings. That was a rate that's set by the CEO for these ESCO, for the companies that come and do these audits to do.
And then we sign a contract for 4.9 million and it could never change.
Correct. That's how.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can you repeat that? Because we didn't catch what
I'm
you
sorry.
said, Andrew.
The part I said? So what Councilor was referring to was the original audit that we set funds aside for. There's a flat fee per square foot of building for the ESCO. So they're not competing on price of that audit, but the Colorado Energy Office sets that rate of 25 cents per square foot based on our distance from Denver. So we paid that per square foot for the facilities that were audited. I believe we set aside $125,000 for the square footage that we audited. We didn't do every single building, but we did the biggest energy users, the most occupied buildings, the ones where we have the most maintenance concerns. Those kinds of buildings were the ones that we primarily focused on in the audit. And even during the audit, we actually modified that scope a little bit where certain buildings weren't, I guess, bearing out that they needed anything. Connor showed that red, yellow, green chart, the things that kind of came out green. That chart was developed early in the audit process, and that's not necessarily what the projects had settled out on. Ended up focusing on quite a bit more that was tied into energy savings. He's mentioned the Public Works Office specifically, so we can finish the consolidation of departments. And all of those parts kind of will fit together in this project if we are able to execute them all going forward. All those costs will be borne out also in the design effort here that's going to come up. So those guaranteed energy savings will be tuned and finalized before we enter into that energy savings contract.
President Aliff, was your question appropriately responded to?
Yeah, but I'm not done.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So I guess the big question for me is how do you guys make money?
So from that design fee, there's obviously a little bit of profit built in for us
Well,
to.
let's just put it this way. I get that. In the 4.9 million, how much do you guys make?
I don't know. off the
Based
top
on
of my
your-
head. Go ahead.
We have a overhead and profit that is put into.
How much?
I think it's like 10%.
Let me-
10% of the project?
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check also. This was part of the competitive solicitation as well. Each respondent to that solicitation had to guarantee what their maximum fees were going to be. I will find that number and make sure everyone knows that one. The other piece is that it does not include financing costs. So those financing costs, they're going to leave to us to determine how to finance that project. This is not something that we've got CMTA and we're using their financing mechanism. They're not. They're going to bring the solution to us and we can go out to market just like we do for any financing mechanism we have that's appropriate. So those are, I just want to be clear that those costs are not baked into CMTA's estimated cost of the construction project.
We
Their
don't want
design
to,
fees.
we don't want to make money on the financing. We think you should go out and get the best possible rate that you can. And I would say.
You're probably missing the boat on that.
probably.
I guess my only question would be, I know you show a $280,000 a year savings. But literally, I think for us to make decisions, we need to see the total cost. So it's really easy to say, here's your assumptions, this is what you're gonna save. But we don't have all the numbers. We don't see where, literally, you're getting paid 10% or in design fees on something a public works department should be doing, right?
Well, I think, even if you were going out and, replacing equipment, many times you do have to pull permit to do that. And if you were pulling a permit, would need engineered stamp drawings to do that. And so you are paying an engineering firm to do. I think the value that we are bringing is that, we're looking at not just one single piece of equipment and saying, go replace that boiler. We're saying, is this boiler replacement the right fit for this building holistically? And if so, great. I mean, that's fine, but you're paying those design costs when you do that work.
And then the last thing I would say, and I think it was answered in the presentation, I thought I got an out in it, is that through the bidding process, I don't want to run into that debacle again where we eliminate Pueblo providers.
Right.
Because we're going to this group that has all these specific providers and it bypasses Pueblo contractors.
Yeah, so as John mentioned, we're
Just for a moment,
Go
just
ahead.
be sure that you speak into your microphone. Some of the counselors are saying it's hard to hear up here.
Yep, of course.
Thank you. And the audience. Oh, looks like it's hard for the audience too. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Please proceed.
Yeah, so as John mentioned, we are CMTA is an engineering firm first. We do not rep any equipment. We do not rep any providers to install any of this equipment. And like we said, we want to bring solutions to the table that are manageable by your staff and by the people in this area. We work together with the city, with Public Works. If you have trusted contractors, trusted pieces of equipment or providers today, we want to make sure that they are being included on that list and a priority. We might have some that you guys haven't worked with before that will add into that list as well. We want to have as many people bidding this scope of work as possible. Again, to get you competitive pricing, to keep everyone honest, to get you the best project physically possible at the end of the day. But it is decided between us and the city, but ultimately it's the city's decision who we are sending these things out to bid to.
The other piece that I would build off on that is we want to prioritize local labor, because what our experience has been across the board, whether it's in Pueblo or Denver or Washington, DC, has been that when you have local contractors working on local work, people are more invested and you're getting better quality work, just craftsmanship perspective. And I think that matters. And so we have no prescribed list. We have no prescribed contractors. We want to work with the people that y'all want to work with.
Real quick, just to answer your question about total cost, that will be firmed up at the time the energy performance contract is brought forward. That agreement will outline exactly what that total cost will be. The current total estimated cost was that 4.9 million that was shown there. And that included the design fees and everything else. So, but that before we take that step, you will have those numbers in front of you. They will also want to see those numbers because they have to guarantee it as well. So. Hope that answered the question.
I have a question regarding the financing, and this might be a question for you, Mr. Hayes or Mr. Nunn. How would we go about financing that $4 million number? Would that be coming from, we'd have to get a loan from a bank? How would that look?
I'll take a stab at it, and Danny can slap me later for misanswering, but we have financed projects before, right? So we have done the HVAC project there at PMJC. We've procured real estate with financing in the past. Those have typically been done through COPs, so certificates of participation. So that's one method of financing, but the city could also go out and get loans and do other things as well. So there are a number of options there. But ultimately, the city, I think, would seek the most favorable financing it could for the length of the obligation, which again was talked about for 20 years, or it's not preset that it's any one particular mean method or lender, if that makes sense.
To add onto that, you mentioned COPs. Many times we see people use what's called a tax exempt lease purchase, where you're basically saying we're installing, 6 rooftop units, and that is held up as collateral for the loan. The other piece of that is, I mentioned earlier that, CMTA's never missed a guarantee. That gives banks a level of security that many times we see that banks are excited about bidding our projects because they know that there's less risk there, because historically we have performed over time, and they don't have to worry about the energy savings not being there to back that up. If that makes sense.
Mr. Nunn, do you have any other feedback on that? Okay, Jenna.
So the typical term in these types of financing are to collateralize the upgrades as part of the lease purchase agreement. So last time we did one of these, I want to say was around 2012, and we're paying our last payment on that one next month. So in that agreement, the upgrades were the collateralization for that agreement. So I'm assuming that would be similar in our situation here too.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to recognize Councilor Dante and then Councilor Hernandez.
Danny, I have a question for you. Is that the way the PBR building was financed?
Yes, so
Okay.
with the PBR building, we placed other assets as collateral for that COP.
Okay.
I think after we closed on it, we switched it so that the collateralization is the building itself. And please forgive me for all of the C's tonight, but
That's all I had for you.
thank you.
Councilor Hernandez.
Oh, I wasn't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Councilor Dante, please.
Andrew, did this originate from the Energy Commission?
About this, it was certainly discussed in there at the time. We brought it up, and it was a topic that came up in that discussion. So they've obviously, commission over time has evolved, but there have been a number of measures for energy conservation, for energy policy, cost savings. All of those different things have been brought up in the commission from time to time. So the answer is yes, it was discussed in there for sure.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And it's been ongoing for, like I said, this last 2.5, 3 years.
Franchise agreement. So how do they calculate the franchise agreement? I know I knew this at one time, but I forgot.
You're referring to the franchise agreement with Black Hills?
Franchise agreement. How do they calculate the fee that the city receives?
Okay, so you're talking about the rates themselves?
No,
Gentlemen,
the city receives a
Franchise fee.
fee every month, I believe.
so there's a franchise fee that is included in the franchise agreement.
Right.
That is on top of the sales and use tax the city receives for utility payments made to Black Hills. That is I believe it's a 3% fee if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But that is set in that agreement, in the agreement that was negotiated between city
Right.
council at that time and Black Hills.
And the 3% is based on what?
I think it's a fairly standard arrangement that most municipalities have with utilities around the state. So
So is it on the amount of money that is collected, or is it on
that's a great
the
question.
amount of electricity that is used?
Absolutely. So absolutely the energy and demand charges, depends on the type of rates. I mean, we're getting in a little deep, but there are a number of different rate structures that Black Hills has for residential customers, for commercial customers, et cetera. But the energy charges that you get and some of the additional fees that are imposed by the state, essentially you subtotal those things up and there is a franchise fee that is attached to most of those, just like the sales and use tax is attached to most of those fees.
Okay, so there is a reason why I brought that up, is because if we're gonna save $280,000, was the loss in the fee also included in that calculation?
No.
Because we're gonna lose some fees if our,
That's right. And not yet. And two reasons. One is we are still, we have engineers order of magnitude kind of estimates for the cost of the project so far. As you get closer through this design phase, obviously those estimates are going to firm up. So I think you'll probably get a little bit more refinement out of that at that time. In addition, since we started the audit, the energy rates have gone up 7% last year. And obviously there's another 7 or 8% been proposed in this latest rate case filing. Those projections are, going to help make the case that help the energy savings case as we go forward as well. So that 3% will quickly be dwarfed by an 8% rate increase in the other direction as well. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I still have another question.
Okay, we'll give you one more minute because we still have Councilor Hernandez and we still have to move on with our agenda. So
The Ditmar building, as I noticed, everything's almost red all the way across. And that, we've only owned that for 2 years,
Right.
I believe. So.
Right.
Did we purchase it in that kind of condition?
Yes. So, I mean, obviously we bought a used building. Right? So we don't, when you buy a building with 20-year-old systems, you get 20-year-old systems. Many, I would say that the things that consume energy in there, the HVAC systems and the lighting and those sorts of things, obviously they've gone through and identified some opportunities in there. Since then, some of the projects like PMJC had come up, we'd looked through there, but we started that project because there was an emergency with getting that HVAC system replaced. So that PMJC upgrades, the HVAC system that is not part of our $4.5 million. We're not going to go back and do that again. Ditmar as well. We're in the middle of a renovation right now to establish the employee health clinic that's in there. There's obviously HVAC work that's going on to support that as well. So some of those things are not part of this project.
okay, can you hold Councilor Dante because Councilor Hernandez has
Okay,
been.
you go ahead and then I'll ask my question
Okay.
after that.
Counselor Dante asked my question.
Good. Do you have another? We'd be happy to answer.
I guess the follow-up to that would be with regards to what was borrowed or used to purchase the building. Is any of that money also meant to fix some of the 20-year-old building issues?
Right. So the fund source, correct me if I'm wrong, fund source for the purchase of the Ditmar building was funds that were set aside to purchase the Wells Fargo building
Correct.
with the county. So when the county moved forward without us, we did not spend those funds, and those funds were repurposed by city council for the purpose of procuring the Ditmar building. And since then, we've entered into this design and construction contract to get the building ready for the clinic and for occupancy. And so those funds are all from dollars that were previously budgeted and appropriated for the Wells Fargo building. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, just.
They're not, the building was not financed like we've been talking about with PBR.
Right. So, but were the funds that came from the bank, non-purchase, were some of those meant for upgrading the systems, those 20-year-old systems?
So we are doing that. So, I mean, that's part of that renovation project. So that's why I'm saying, I guess
It's
some of
not
those
part of this.
20-year-old HVAC systems are in there, are being done separately under a different contract.
Okay, so it wouldn't be part of this.
Not the
Okay,
HVAC.
That's
The
all. I need.
lighting, I can't remember. Lighting, I think, is covered in that one.
Okay,
Yeah, so like I said, when we developed that list of priorities, one of those was ongoing projects or even projects that pop up along the way. Like we said, we've been working on this for 2 years. We originally had proposed upgrades at that building. We originally had proposed a full HVAC renovation of the PMJC building. Other circumstances came through and that needed to be taken care of in a different way and faster. So that gets removed from our project. We focus on the next highest priorities for those maintenance and cost savings items. So we did look at those, we analyzed them, we had solutions, and other projects came up to take care of them in their place. So we're still addressing some lighting options in that building, but that would basically be the only thing that we would touch in that 4.9 million for the Dittmer building.
thank you.
Thanks.
My last question.
Okay, we are actually 15 minutes behind on our agenda at this point. So what I would like to propose is that Mr. Hayes, in our upcoming work session, Counselor Dante, if you can keep our question in mind, if we can follow up on this in our upcoming work session, would that be okay? Okay, thank you. All right, we will move forward with our next place on the next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Sorry. All right, at this time in the council's agenda, we are going to be doing a follow-up on our previous CSAC priority discussion where we had our CSAC meeting with the county commissioners about 2 weeks ago. And we asked council to come back, if you remember, Ms. Gina Lopez Ferguson asked us to help facilitate that funding process. They asked for some guidelines on what they would like to see, and we were asked to, and they were wanting some priorities. So at this time, council, what we will do is we will work with Lexi, and I'm sorry, I don't know who are, I guess.
Tanya Simmental with
Tanya,
United Way of
yes.
Civil.
So they will help us with our discussion, and then hopefully from this, we will be able to push forward some recommendations to the CSAC committee around what our priorities for the funding for this year's cycle will be, as it's needing to be, the process needs to be begin by the beginning of next month. So, okay. Ladies, do you want to begin?
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Madam Chair and Council, for having us. Again, my name is Lexi Romero Stewart. I'm stepping in for Melissa Cook, who's our Director of Housing and Citizen Services. This is really meant to be more of your discussion amongst yourselves. We can facilitate as best possible and give any expert insight as you may ask or see fit. But just to kind of give you a lay of the land. You've had several conversations before about CSAC and your prioritization. At the last award, council had wanted to just relook at the CSAC priorities and ensure that there were any necessary adjustments for the new funding cycle so that those priorities would equitably reflect and address the needs of the community. So at past conversations that you've had, you've settled on a couple of different priorities already. Example is prioritizing first-time applicants or those that didn't receive funding for the prior year. I really think that where things had landed from your previous discussion was wanting to take a look at various categories, which are on your screen, but I believe you've been given handouts as well with that same information, and provide any insight from leadership to give to CSAC on if there are sectors of community that you feel need to be higher prioritized than others, and any sort of insight and or any other elements of priority that you would like CSAC to consider with this next funding cycle. As Madam Chair had expressed, typically CSAC will open applications July 1 to ensure that we receive appropriate guidance and then pass that to CSAC for the new funding cycle. That cycle's been pushed back ideally about a month. So ideally we'd like to open up for August 1st, pending your discussion tonight. So with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Lexi. President Aliff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you guys for coming tonight. I'm kind of confused right off the bat, but that's normal. So don't be alarmed by that. But I don't recall where council ever came to a consensus that the priority consideration of applicants was ever settled on, where it's first time. And I just, from your presentation just a second ago, I got from you that we have settled on that.
So that, I believe, was listed in the original agreement under Exhibit A. This was taken to council a few weeks earlier, at the previous session, and I think that that's open for discussion, but within the agreement here, it shows that priority consideration of applicants was to be given to applicants that did not receive funding in the prior year, first-time applicants. Ideally, priority should be given to programmatic applicants over applications seeking general funding, and then applicants providing low to moderate income childcare services.
Okay, so from my perspective, as I said in the last meeting, is that I don't believe that that's a smart move by council. I think it should be open and we should trust in CSAC to be able to make the decisions based upon their investigation through the processes that they use. And I don't think that it's smart saying I'm going to give priority to first-time applicants over somebody who's gotten it for 10 years. And the only reason they've gotten it for 10 years is because they qualified and the need was deemed necessary by the board, the commissioners that looked at it. So that's a big deal to me. And I'll just say that there. And then the second thing that I wanted to say as we move through this on community services, I don't know why we would prioritize any community service. And once again, say, beginning in July, okay, we're only going to prioritize family planning and recreation. So everybody else need not apply because we're telling the CSAC commissioners that this is the path that we want to take with these only this very narrow set of guidelines. And I mean, I guess bottom line for me is I think that we're as a city council are getting way too heavy into micromanaging this when you have professionals or people who know what they're doing, that we've given the power to make those decisions. And just like this last round of allotments or grants or whatever you want to call them, there were questions. There were questions about where the money was going and why. Those questions were answered and everything was fine. I don't see a problem with council doing that. But to just start chopping things and saying, you know, you have to meet these certain criteria is a problem with me as we move forward.
Thank you, President Aliff. Councilor Gomez.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You know, I understand this is hard for CSAC and they're a political body, just like us. They're going to have their politics in it, just like we do. But I am concerned about some of the basic questions I'm just not feeling capable. I'm getting answers to, and I've been talking about this for a while now. You know, we have Colorado. I don't know if you know the answer to how many other Colorado-sized cities with the same kind of in the range kind of a budget or populations have nonprofit funding like CSAC. I don't know if you know that answer or not. Are we the only one? That's number one. Number two, just the things I brought up before. Vetting goals. I mean, I don't feel comfortable that we've gotten an answer on that. What's the sustainability plan? What self-sufficiency are we talking about? How long on CSAC funding, just like Mr. Aliff just brought up? And are we going to cap this thing eventually? Because we're talking about a lot of money. And right now, our council is trying to keep an eye and maybe it's going to be a total restructure. I don't know. But if we don't do something, we can't just keep on looking the other way. We've got to get answers to these questions, and I don't feel satisfied we've gotten them yet.
Thank you, Counselor Gomez. I know for me, looking back at what the CSAC chair requested of us was some guidance. They wanted just like, what sandbox do they want? Would we like for them to play with? And they just wanted us to identify some priorities. And I hear President Aliff on that piece of his discussion. For me, I would just say like, one of the things is as you go through the applications, I would really encourage you all to consider the evidence-based data for, looking at those and are they providing evidence-based data in their applications? And asking for key performance indicators and maybe streaming like a couple of things. I know that this is just something that in a month we can't figure out, but for me, what I would ask of the CSAC committee is to consider, and I've asked this before to them, that they look into the data brief by the Pueblo Department of Public Health and Environment. This is the community needs assessment. This is evidence-based work that's already in process in our community that outlines strategic priorities for health care services, mainly with mental health, substance use, and managing risky behaviors. So my guidance would be that we really consider the data that has been collected by the city of Pueblo and published by the Pueblo Health Department in looking at the funding recommendations. And also, the other priority would be connecting this in to how we're prioritizing organizations who are looking to stabilize social determinants of health that, can make mental health services and the health services more accessible and, where there's a stronger continuity between those systems. So that would be my only feedback at this point to the CSAC committee. Councillor Boston, and then I'll come over to Councillor Dante.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what President Aliff said. I think we're kind of getting way too into the weeds for an organization that is appointed to do a duty. I'm seeing this community service category guide here, and you're going to have 7 different opinions. Maybe Ted cares about youth services, maybe Roger cares about homeless services, Diane cares about environmental, so on and so forth. You're going to get new people up here every 2 years, and this is going to change every 2 years. You have 7 varying opinions here. I think it's better left more so in the hands on the professionals. For instance, we appoint people to planning and zoning, and they give recommendations to city council or make decisions. Same thing with regional building boards. If you start second guessing and wanting to micromanage all of those, I think we're getting a little too deep. I know they did request some guidance, but I think that's mostly from the pushback. I think the discussions are always healthy to say if we have concerns to maybe go back to the drawing board slightly, or express those concerns. Kind of like this document here might give some guidance, but not micromanage too much.
Right.
I understand some of that, but I think trying to give the 7 of our opinions, the 3 county commissioners' opinions, and then you have 10 opinions that you're going to narrow down to 5, 6, 7 categories when, as President Aliff said, Boys and Girls Club, they get a lot of money because they do a lot of good things. I understand some self-sustainability arguments and whatnot, but there's reasons. I think that certain organizations get money. Do I disagree that it may be needed to be adjusted? No, but I think if we start going down this path, as I said last time, I didn't agree with it when commissioners were here. I'm still kind of on that same boat, and I think we're kind of getting too deep into the weeds. I don't know what the goal of this talk is or this meeting is. I'm still confused on that as well. Yeah.
Councillor Dante.
Hello, I want to go back into history. I originally thought that CSAC was formed to take the burden off the city council and the commissioners having to go through all the applications. And according to the 2021, CSAC's role is to ensure a fair, equitable process, accountability, and effective service delivery for community programs. But yet, I don't know how many years it's been that you prioritize certain organizations over another one. And that seems pretty subjective depending on how your organization feels, just like how we would feel. So I have never thought that it would be fair and equitable for there to be prioritization. That's one of my problems. And, one of the other things that I'd like to see is that you cap the request amount to 75,000. Cap the request amount to 75,000. Because I've seen organization requesting 300, 200,000. And that's just ridiculous for the amount of money we have to give out to as many organizations that we have to give out to. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Counselor Dante. I will recognize Counselor Latino, and then we'll come back over to you, Counselor Gomez.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you're well aware, we have, under community services here, we have a program that we established 2 years ago where we gave $200,000 from the city coffers from the council to assist the homeless services in this community. You're aware of that, right? And that went to Catholic Charities. And I've followed up on that and visit with them frequently as it relates to what's going on there. I think we've done a great job in terms of assisting these folks that are interested in being assisted, that are not there, that are not on the street because they want handouts only. They want to get their lives together. And we've had some success with that. As it relates to childcare, youth services, anything that we can do for young people, obviously, it means a lot to me because again, it has nothing to do with me, but that's my background, working with young people. So the homeless services, I think that what we're doing through Catholic Charities, we can only go so far with these folks. You know, basically they have to help themselves. And again, this is not about me, but I'm on the streets at night. Okay. And in the last week and a half, we've had a young homeless woman wrapped in a sheet, sleeping on Main Street, right next to Marriott. Okay. Same young woman was in Loaf and Jug 4 or 5 days before that, stealing product, food. No shoes, no underclothes, living in that kind of environment on the street. She ends up on Main Street next to the Marriott. The police show up with AMR. They help to get her up. She's not wearing any shoes or underclothes or anything else. She's wrapped in a sheet that I'm sure someone from the Marriott gave her. She goes across from the parking lot of the Marriott, ends up on the street on Santa Fe in a huddled position, wrapped up again. Police follow her over. And we have, as AMR does, we have a young female police officer who has doing a great job helping her, trying to get her awake. They can't wake her. So they end up putting her on a gurney and send her to Parkview. I tried to check on that, but I'm assuming that basically, and I'll have to follow up that, I'm not so sure she didn't pass away. Okay. Last week, Friday, same thing. We have a homeless amputee in a wheelchair right over here at night, late at night, laying behind this building, right behind here, right on the north side. He's out of his wheelchair, laying on the ground. Okay. I come over, I call the police. Police bring AMR down here, or excuse me, the police don't come. I apologize. AMR comes. We get him up in the wheelchair and they let him go and they leave. Okay. So my concerns are, we're doing things, but are we getting somewhere in terms of really helping these people? Are we really helping them? Because again, I've told you 2 incidents and that's just 2. There's many more that I've seen. Okay. being on the street at night. So my concern is, what strategic plan do you have or objectives do you have to handle those kinds of situations? And are you working collaboratively with Catholic Charities?
I can go ahead and address that. So when we are receiving applications as CSAC reviews, we are not representing any one entity or organization. We are merely examining the needs of the communities, reviewing the applications that come in, and assessing whether or not the impact that they are going to make through these applications will meet the needs of the community. So it's not necessarily that we are choosing to work with one organization or another. We are reviewing the applications as a commission, scoring them, and coming to a consensus as what best serves the needs of the community.
So when you're scoring these, basically, you're scoring them. So are you scoring them by sitting together in a collaborative manner? We use that term a lot, but with as a committee, or are you visiting with these people on site with these organizations?
We review the applications independently. We come back together as a commission and discuss them. And we also held in-person interviews here in chambers with all of the applicants and allowed them opportunity to express their priorities and the desire for the funding. And then after funded, we do have the opportunity to go and meet with the funded organizations.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I will give field maybe one more moment to Counselor Gomez, and then we'll move forward with our agenda. One minute, Counselor Gomez.
I think there's a huge difference between micromanagement and our fiduciary responsibility as elected officials and the use of taxpayer dollars. I think if we can get the basics down, that for every nonprofit looking through taxpayers assisted funding, there should be certain caps, certain requirements, certain basics. I don't think we're there. I'll be honest with you, I don't think it has anything to do with micromanagement. I think that's our responsibility. Because I have a lot of people that call me up, and I'm not gonna bring out some phony numbers for you or I don't have that. I'm just telling you in discussions, we better start learning how to say no or cap some stuff once in a while, or teach these nonprofits, or maybe the house mechanisms inside the house to teach themselves, how come they're not doing their own internal grant writing? How come they're not doing their own fundraising? How come they're not having bake sales? How come they're not doing these things? These are all targets. Within 2 to 3 years, we get an injection of funds from the council. You should be on your own. That's me. I know I started an organization called the Coven. It's been going for 40 years. I'm not just bragging. I did a lot of thought into that and how it could stand on its own 2 feet. Now, I'm not saying that every nonprofits are trying to do the best they can. They got good hearts. They're not trying to steal money, but they get used to being on the dole. I'm sorry. And it's our fault. Okay? A little tough love doesn't hurt every now and then, but I just wish we could all work together, look at this thing fairly. Don't demonize somebody. Don't give somebody 10 to 1 on equity funding to one and then crap for the other ones. It's nonsense. We need to restructure this thing, and I'm not talking about micromanaging. I'm talking about working and developing an efficient way to do this. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. I think at this point, you have some information to take back to the CSAC meeting, which I believe is Wednesday. Yes, and if you need any more clarification, please feel free to reach out. And I just want to point out that this is just, we're not trying to redo this whole process. We're just trying to give some guardrails to the committee as they need to begin their funding cycle this year, so that we don't have some of the same questions regarding the funding amounts that we did last year. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Thank you. All right, we'll move forward with the council's agenda. We'll invite Ms. Carla Sykes, our city attorney, who will start us on a conversation about council code of ethics. We will recognize your presentation, Ms. Sykes, for 15 minutes once you're all ready and loaded up on the computer.
Thank you, members of council. I was asked tonight to provide a presentation about the ethics code with the goal of amending it pursuant to direction given by city council tonight. or sometime in the near future. So several of you have come to the law department and asked about amending our ethics code. And so that's sort of what tonight's presentation is about. Don't have a whole lot of substance because tonight the goal is to kind of give an overview and then get direction from city council. So I'm just going to give some background and then hopefully get some thoughts from city council. So wanted to start tonight just basically with the mission that's stated in the ethics code to kind of guide the conversation. So the mission of the City of Pueblo is to ensure that the public has confidence in the integrity of all aspects of city government and public servants that exercise discretionary powers. And so it's important to remember that this is in discretionary powers, and that's why the ethics code exists, is when those people are making those decisions. And primarily, tonight's discussion is going to focus on city council and city council's role and the ethics as they deal or relate to city council. So the current ethics code applies to elected officials, boards and commissions, and employees. It only provides consequences for acts which result in a financial benefit to the official or the member or the employee. So we've had several conversations about that. A lot of the ethics complaints that come before city council fail to state a claim because really the only part of our ethics code that has any teeth is a part of the code that talks about the financial benefit, whether it be a financial benefit in a contract or a city council member, for instance, taking official action on something where that member is going to get a financial benefit from that action. The rest of the code, it has a lot of stuff in the code that talks about aspirational goals, things that council should strive to do, how they should act. But if you don't act that way, there really are no consequences. And I think that's sort of where some of the frustration and where some of this is coming from. So city council is responsible for investigating complaints and deciding the merits of complaints against city council members, the mayor, or the municipal court judge. The ethics code applies to employees. But remember, those employees are bound by disciplinary proceedings. So if there's complaints against employees, those go to the mayor. Those typically are investigated by HR, the director, and then they go through a disciplinary process. So again, the focus that we are focusing on tonight really are the ethics code as they relate to city council. So I think the goals for a revision of the ethics code, as I understand it from talking to several of you, is to more clearly define the complaint process, more clearly define the misconduct, more clearly define consequences for misconduct, and provide consequences for a broader range of misconduct. So providing consequences for some of those aspirational things that are currently in the code. I've heard some people suggest that they'd like to have some consequences when people breach some of those things. So in putting this together, I've looked at ethics codes from the state of Colorado. And so you know that our current ethics code is modeled after the state of Colorado's ethics code that is contained in the Colorado revised statutes. I also looked at Colorado Springs has an ethics code, Boulder, Fort Collins. A lot of cities have ethics codes. These are just the ones that I pulled Colorado Springs because it just happens to be a neighbor. I had Boulder's because someone provided me with Boulder's code. I don't know. I believe it was a council member, but quite frankly, don't remember which council member it was. And I pulled Fort Collins because that happens to be a comparable city that we often look to when we're looking at comparables for Pueblo. So I pulled Fort Collins and looked at those. Mr. Ted Freeman also came to me when I first was hired as a city attorney and provided me with a very lengthy ethics code that he had put together for city council. It has a lot of good concepts in it. So I also took another look at that again and dug that out, took a look at that, see what we could pull from that. Former Councilwoman Sarah Martinez had provided an outline of some guidelines for council that she wanted when she was on council. She wanted us to take a look at. So I also pulled that out of the filing cabinet, so to speak, and took a look at all of those. So those are some of the things that I took a look at when I was putting together this presentation. Some of the things that I think I've heard from city council and I've observed as we've gone through and looked at some of the complaints we've had over the last couple of years as I've been city attorney is frivolous complaints. What do we do with dismissal of frivolous complaints? I think that's been some frustration. I know President Aliff has voiced that frustration a couple of times. Who identifies those? Who reviews it? Who sets the criteria for determining when there's a frivolous complaint? Currently, right now, the city attorney's office looks at it, and then we provide what we have called in our code an advisory opinion. The opinions that the city attorney's office give truly aren't advisory, because advisory opinions would be future looking. So under the rest of the codes that I have looked at, the advisory opinion from the city attorney's office is for future conduct. So if one of you had something you wanted to do, you would call the city attorney's office and say, I have this contract that my company is going to enter into, and this is what it looks like, and we have this thing coming up on the agenda. Is this going to be a conflict for me? Or how should I handle this? And we would issue an advisory opinion of the best way to handle it, or an advisory opinion is whether or not there's a conflict, whether or not you need to recuse yourself. Those are truly advisory opinions. So there are other ways to do this. And Colorado Springs sets forth a list of criteria of what they determine to be a frivolous complaint. And a lot of that is framed by what they deem to be a complaint under their code. So one of the things that council could do is to frame the complaint a little bit differently. What is the criteria that you need to meet to have a viable complaint under our code? And then just objectively, does that meet that? So you would want to take a look at those things. Some of them are not objective. Some of them are subjective, like whether or not under Colorado Springs is whether or not the complaint is groundless on its face. So someone's going to have to make that determination. So you're going to have to charge someone with making that determination. In Colorado Springs, they have an ethics commission, and the ethics commission is who looks at that. So those are some things you need to think about. I think city council would probably want to set a clear standard of review for violations. Under our current code, we have a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. Some of the other codes have preponderance of the evidence. Some others have clear and convincing. So that's going to frame how the complaint is viewed. So you'll want to think about what standard do you want to apply to these complaints. Maybe certain complaints carry a different standard than others. Those are something that you want to take a look at or think about. You want to determine who will review. And I think this is a big one because in the past, it's always been city council governs themselves and they review everything themselves. In other jurisdictions, they have a third party that reviews it. In Boulder, it's a city council. Colorado Springs, they have an independent commission. On that commission that's made up of 5 people, they are appointed by city council. Those 5 people have to have some expertise in ethical matters. So either by education or experience, they have a background in ethics. They are not city council members. So it's an independent commission. The city attorney is their legal advisor, but does not vote on the commission. So that's sort of how they do it. Under Colorado Springs scheme, the person that's bringing the complaint also has an independent right to a hearing. So the advisory, the commission does the investigation, puts together an advisory opinion that then goes to council. Council then has a hearing. So it's much more involved, their process. The city of Boulder, the city attorney conducts the investigation at the request of city council. And they can hire outside counsel to do that investigation. So that's another way to do it. Fort Collins has a review board that they set up. It has 3 members. Those 3 members are city council members. So you don't have to do it any particular way. Those are just different ways you can do it. Other cities are doing it. You can do it whichever way you feel fits best for Pueblo. You could do it some hybrid way. You could have a review board that has a couple members of city council and a citizen on it. You could do it any way you wanted to, but we need to set up some sort of scheme, whichever scheme you like, that's how you would set it up. So then you'd want to set up some procedures for how the reviewing body will conduct the review and the investigation. So most of these other jurisdictions like ours, a complaint either comes through the city attorney's office, it comes through the city clerk's office, and then it is forwarded to the reviewing body for an investigation. Some of these bodies have the ability to subpoena and conduct interviews and do a full investigation, a real investigation like you would expect. And then they have to make written determinations. And that's their advisory opinion that goes to city council, and city council then can accept that or reject it based upon the findings. So there's that one way to do it. So you'd have to set those procedures. What do you want them to look like? How formal do you want them to be? How in depth do you want it to be? Do you want someone going out interviewing someone? Do you want them to be able to do subpoenas? It would be an administrative type hearing. So we have the ability under our code to issue subpoenas for administrative type hearings. So that would be up to you. And then I think one of the things that council, what I've heard from council is they want clear consequences. So under our current code, if you are found that you have violated the ethics code financially and you had a financial interest in something, then you can be required to pay back that financial interest, whatever you gained from that transaction. And that's pretty common. That was pretty common in most of these other jurisdictions. So you could still have that. As far as other consequences for misconduct, you could do a written letter of reprimand, which is, it seems to me, I haven't talked to anybody there, but it seems to me the way that's handled is if you have a sort of a written letter that's more private, you could do a written letter to whoever the offending person is. You could do a public censure. So that would be a vote of the council to censure this person. As part of that, you could remove that person from their committees or their ability to sit on a committee, be work session chair, for example, remove responsibilities from that person from city council. So you could do that as a possible punishment. One of the cities actually had, for some of the violations, they imposed a fining mechanism. So there are different ways that you can do this. It just depends on what council wants. So that would be something that you guys would have to determine, but you want those consequences to be clear based upon the behavior, or at least have clear parameters of what your consequences, what your choices can be. And then you as a council will have to determine based upon the violation, what you think that consequence warrants. So those are some considerations for council. That's a lot of information to digest. It would be a big departure from what we're currently doing under our ethics code. So I think, I didn't go through. So the next part really is going to be up to city council. I specifically did not put any recommendations in here because I want to hear from city council. And this may be something, we talk a lot about stakeholders and stakeholder groups. So this may be a project that city council may want to get some feedback in. So it may be that you want to create a stakeholder group, and we can help from the law department, be a part of that group, and help guide the discussion and take feedback from that discussion, and from that discussion then create a code that hopefully encompasses what the group wants. But stakeholders might be council members, should be probably someone from the mayor's office, HR, someone from boards or commissions, because boards and commissions are also going to be subject to this. You might want to have someone from the community be on it, on the stakeholder group. I would caution you that you don't want your group to be too large because then it just becomes cumbersome. But it's really up to city council how you want to move forward at this point. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'm here to take direction.
Thank you, Ms. Sykes. I'll begin just fielding the questions here by council. I'll begin with President Aliff.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. Literally, this is the first we've looked at it. It would be, in my opinion, it would behoove us to get the information that you sent us, maybe some examples of other communities and what they do, and then we come together for another work session based upon us having all that information and then being able to discuss in a very direct way. Hey, I think this looks like a good deal. I think this doesn't look like a good deal. I'd like to see this. I'd like to see that. But there's no doubt that the current system we have is very lackadaisical and does not hold anybody accountable for horrible behavior. So we should be held to a higher standard. And we should, as elected officials, the argument's always been, well, you get elected, and if people don't like you, then they won't elect you again. But you're elected for 4 years. So if you get elected and for 4 years act crazy, then there should be some kind of ramifications for that. Or if you get elected and you do something that is not right, there should be some kind of ramifications for that. And I just think we ought to look at it and at least have the discussion and have the information in front of us so we can make smart decisions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, President Aliff. Councilor Gomez.
Yes, I've got a lot to say about this because I think we've been through these wars already. I don't want any more people involved in this from the cities, from the mayor's office. The chances of being compromised in trying to play favor to the executive branch is way out of whack. Maybe it's me, but yeah, it probably is me. You can't sit here and say I haven't complained about, as a duly elected official, being forced to use car when I go to department heads at $41 an hour at my expense because I'm a select counselor that happens to speak up. That's a problem. Okay, then you've got, you think it's appropriate to ban a city chief of staff from communicating with me as a public when I need information? That was done by the executive branch, the mayor. That's okay. Then you've got, we've got so many conflicts. I can't believe you're even putting this thing on. We look at what's going on with Pura right now. We have a sitting mayor with voting rights on the urban renewal that deals with initiative money, taxpayer project monies, and she's voting on this stuff. That's a physical conflict of interest as big as your head. So I'm just saying all these things that we in pie in the sky nonsense, until we start doing basic things instead of selecting out counselors that you can go after one way or the other and continue violating the rights of this council. I'm sitting here going, I'm in disbelief of what you brought forward. I don't think you're the person I'm not trying to hurt you personally. I'm just saying you're not the person to bring it. You had your own issues as municipal judge. Let's be honest. We're going to talk, let's put it on the table.
Councilor Gomez, point of order. Let's keep it focused on the topic.
Yeah,
We don't need
I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you.
I'm just saying all the hypocrisy I just can't handle. Thank you.
Please, Councilor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Sykes, for bringing this forward. This is something that I've discussed that needed to be revamped since I had joined City Council. I think there's been flaws in the process, as Councilman Aliff stated. This isn't a city administration initiative. This is a I think holding ourselves to a higher standard initiative as city councilors. I know I'm a proponent for this. I'm one of the people, I'll openly say that requested this to be brought forward, and I'm not the only one. But I do think there needs to be ramifications. There needs to be higher standards. There needs to be a third-party board, not ourselves vetting stuff. So I agree with Councilman Aliff. I wanted to discuss this at the last two retreats. We didn't really touch on it this last year. We touched on it a little bit the year prior, but didn't really follow up on it. So I would like to see this be something that is discussed further. And we come together as a group that figures out the body that will vet these complaints, because I think the seven of us vetting our own complaints is not a good plan. I think the current ramifications in there of only the fiscal thing is just not enough. And I think there needs to be more things in the code that hold us to do the jobs we were elected to do at the right way. So that'd be my direction, is agreeing with Councilman Aliff to follow up on this, get us all the information, let us come back to you at a future work session and come together with our ideas of how we would like to see this change.
Thank you, Councilor Boston. I agree with a lot of the information that was posted or brought up by my colleagues here across the dais. And not only is this something that for myself, those who have brought it up, President Aliff asked me to support putting this on the agenda. It sounds like there's conversations with Councilor Boston too around how important this is to bring forward. So I agree that, again, this was something that I think we need to do. The current statute, I agree, is pretty limiting to that particular thing that that one can be held accountable for. And I understand that that we are trying to figure out a way to hold ourselves accountable, but this is what the public is asking of us. The public is asking for us to step up and create something like this. So I am happy to, as work session chair, commit time in the work session on this particular project in our work session. And so we can talk about like what moving forward, what that could look like. So maybe I'm seeing that we have some room on the we can discuss, having a follow-up on our upcoming agendas. And if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Sykes, just helping us with some of the readings or articles you have on what you've researched on what other councils have done that you've presented in your research today in your presentation. I think that would be wonderful, and we'll figure out a time to follow up on this.
So as I understand it, just so I'm clear, you guys want copies. So I will send you the state, Colorado Springs, Boulder, Fort Collins, and then I will also send you copies of what Ted Freeman has provided me and what former Councilwoman Martinez provided me. So you have copies of all of that. And then feel free, you can go out to other cities and look at their codes. If you want to go out and look at another code and find something that you like, if you want to send that to me to take a look at, you can. It's going to be a lot of different variations. A lot of them, like Colorado Springs, it's much bigger than we are. Please keep in mind that we are a 7-person city attorney's office. So the city of Colorado Springs has, close to 100 attorneys or so. So their scheme is going to look a little bit different than what we have the resources for. So keep that in mind when you're looking at some of these other things too.
Thank you. That's fair. Councillor Dante, we give you just 1 minute or two to field your question, and then we'll move forward.
It's not a question, it's a statement that I don't think that an ethics complaint should be looked at in a legal way, because it's common sense what ethics is compared to a legal response. Also, I think that having a third-party commission would be so much better, because we don't want to pit one counselor against another counselor, and then we're not collaborating, we're not working as a team anymore. And I think that's what could end up if we're the ones taking these ethics complaints and deciding who should be censored and who shouldn't.
Well, let me be clear that regardless of who's doing the review, it's still city council that's going to have to do it by official action. So even if an independent group looks at this and gives you an advisory opinion, City council is still gonna have to vote on it. And you guys are still gonna have to vote on what that consequence is going to look like. The independent commission is not going to do that. That's gonna be by city council action. So ultimately, it still comes down to you guys, even though you guys aren't the ones doing the investigation. And you can adopt the findings of the independent commission, but they aren't the ones imposing the censure, for instance. It would be city council. Because you guys are still responsible for policing your own. And so it would be a city council action that would still be imposing that.
Is there a way to get away from us policing ourselves?
So it still has to be done by city council action. Yeah, I will look at that specifically. The answer that I want to say is no, but I'll look at it more fully before I give that answer for certain.
Because I really believe that that's what the problem has been in the past, is that you don't want to go against your fellow counselor, you know?
I think if there was, I think if you guys were ever presented with a case that perhaps was clear, or that majority of you could agree that was poor behavior, there may be some consensus on council to do it. I don't know. But I don't know how you get around that ultimately has to be done through council action.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hernandez.
Just a few questions. Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I think that I don't have any problem with what President Aliff and Councilor Boston are requesting. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think that the establishment of those consequences is very, very important, because that's what council would be voting on, would be the consequences. If this group or this commission or whatever decided that these ethics complaints had some validity to them. I do believe that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. I think the only thing missing from your presentation is it should also include city staff, especially the mayor, as well as the 7 positions, director positions. Now, I believe that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard, but I think the mayor should be held to the highest standard. And I'm not making any judgments about her. I'm just suggesting that if we're going to do an ethics committee or an ethics group, we should look up everything and not just city council, because it is still council's responsibility to vote on ethics complaint for the mayor as well.
So the mayor would be covered by this because the mayor falls under the council's purview, and ethics complaints for employees go to the mayor, and then the mayor investigates those.
Correct.
So those, we could look at other cities and look how they do, but typically employees, because the employees have their own disciplinary process.
Correct.
That's something completely separate.
And I could jump in here too.
Just one quick, and the only thing that I would suggest with regards to the employees is that we have had citizens make complaints about employees, and we have never heard what the outcome is of those complaints were. And maybe we're not supposed to, but it seems, because we don't, it's almost like they're not being heard.
Well,
So
the part of the problem is that those become part of the personnel records, and the personnel records are confidential.
Correct.
So even when employees make complaints against other employees.
right.
I know there's always some frustration because the employee that made the complaint doesn't know, maybe doesn't see that anything happened, doesn't, see that they were suspended or something like that. But they don't get to know the result necessarily of the personnel decision and the personnel action. And that would be the same for council. So even if an employee complaint came to you folks and you then forwarded it to the mayor and said, we want this investigated, it would go through the disciplinary process.
Sure.
But you folks would not be privy to that because it would be a confidential personnel matter.
So I don't think any counselor is asking for the results of any type of investigation, just to know that a citizen's complaint was heard and that an investigation actually took place.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I could follow up on that. So even though it's not the same, but similar. There is a process for city staff going through the contract, the code, and civil service for any of these complaints, the disciplinary process. But Carla's right, anything that happens that I just call it HR, like it's an HR issue, that is confidential information and that can't be shared. And I know that is frustrating when you say somebody did something and what did you do about it? Like we cannot say, we cannot talk about that. On top of that as well, I could go through that process with everybody because it's very complicated and I know it intimately at this point in my job with the city to go through it. And it was a lot of learning at first, but I think that a lot of that can be applied to what you're looking at for ethics when it comes to council. And that goes up to the director level as well. So nobody's exempt from this process. It could be a department head all the way down to a part-timer. It doesn't matter. On that too, I have worked on this on a federal level in depth as well. And so I have some ideas and thoughts about how this is handled for elected officials on a federal level. And if you want to hear that, I'm more than willing to sit down. And also even with this, if any counselor wants to communicate with me, I'm an open line of communication to everybody, even Counselor Gomez. Like, I am not banned from speaking to you. We can speak, but I am more than happy to sit down with all of you to go over my knowledge and experience and explain on the city side how it works for the employees as well. But it's defined in code. Like,
okay. If you can't tell us whether an investigation was held, I get that. I understand all the HR stuff. Is the citizen told whether the citizen who made the complaint is that person told whether an investigation was held?
So typically, they know whether an investigation was held because they're typically contacted to talk about what happened. So they will be interviewed.
Okay.
So they should know that something is happening because of that. But a lot of times what happens is they want to know the result.
Sure.
And we just can't share that with them. But they should know that something is happening because someone from the city typically reaches out to them unless it is something so outrageous that, and we get a few of those, that it's just that we don't give them much credence.
yeah, and we take everyone serious. I can tell you that with confidence that when something comes up to our office or anywhere, it is treated with seriousness no matter what it is.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Being mindful of our agenda, I'm going to give Counselor Latino 1 minute to field your question, and then we need to move forward because we're about 15 minutes behind. So
Thank you.
Counselor Latino, please 1 minute to field your question, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. So we've visited with cities that are comparable in size to Pueblo in the state of Colorado to see what it is that they're doing.
I have not personally visited. I have pulled their code. I pulled their
Pulled the
code of
code.
ethics. And the only one I pulled that I would say is comparable would be Fort Collins. The other ones are Boulder and Colorado Springs, but we could certainly pull others. We often compare to Greeley. I think Canyon City is another one that we often compare to. So we could pull and see what theirs look like.
What
as
about
well.
Lakewood? We're right below Lakewood in terms of population and
I did not pull theirs, but we certainly could.
It would be a good question at CML next week when you go up as well, because
Okay.
they will all be there.
yeah, that's great. That's a great thought. I didn't think about that. That's a great thought.
Thank you. It's good feedback. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward with our agenda. Thank you, Ms. Sykes. I would like to entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I'll make that motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session for a conference with the city attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS 24-6-402, parent 4, parent B, and the following additional details are provided for identification purposes. Retention of outside counsel for pending PUC matters and general litigation.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the council will now move into executive session. The time is now 8:12 PM on June 15, 2026, and I officially adjourn this work session of Pueblo City Council.